Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Think Business Live. I'm looking forward to talking today about wealth, everybody, with Dave Wolcott. And, a lot of times in these podcasts, I get a lot of questions from people asking me questions about wealth management and how to preserve wealth and how to build wealth. So, Dave, I'm looking forward to talking with you, founder and CEO of Pantheon Investments. We're talking about investing. We're going to talk about financial freedom and your book, The Holistic Wealth Strategy. So, thanks so much for being here. As just to kind of kick everything off, as a business coach, I work with solopreneurs to Fortune companies all over the globe who are successful but stuck. And so, I always like to ask a question as we kind of kick things off. Where do people get stuck in a mindset about money? And how can they get unstuck?
Yeah, sure, John. I think people get stuck really, it really is all about mindset, right? And we have these limiting beliefs, things that we were taught by our parents, our peers, our colleagues, things such as deferring your taxes is a good thing to do, right? Because I'd rather pay taxes on the seed rather than the harvest, right? So we kind of learn all these things, as we go through life, right, that we think are the right thing to do, but we haven't been able to really cross that chasm and make the paradigm shift, into this, new world that we live in, and really changing your mindset to be thinking bigger, to be removing those limiting beliefs that you have, and really building towards your actual wealth vision and what that means to you.
Limiting beliefs can be so constricting. We all have them. Here we're just focusing on what they are when it comes to wealth. And I think so many people have, other people's voices to find your voice, to find your grounding. And one of the things you said is, taught, what we're taught. But what's one thing that people get stuck because they're not taught something that they need to be taught sooner, right? So all the people who are, maybe have young children, or many people who are thinking, God, I never thought to actually teach that, right? What is that one thing?
Yeah, you know what it really is, John? It's that understanding that you are your greatest asset. So if you start by investing in yourself, whether that's in your health, in your education, hiring coaches, being part of masterminds, right? Reading, listening to great podcasts and things like that, that is going to accelerate your wealth trajectory as well as your business trajectory, probably more than anything else. I've always gotten at least a 10x return on any type of investment I've made in myself. So I continue to double down on myself, and the other things fall into place.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so important. But I want to talk about one thing, which is, you're talking about you are your greatest asset. We're talking about money. We're talking about building wealth. But one of the things I see as a business coach, and I'm working with people across the whole, like solopreneur, Fortune company owners of, and C-level execs of mammoth companies down to solopreneurs of teams of 1 or 2 or 10 or 50. A common thread that I see is people connecting to a higher self-worth, right? So when you talk about, you are your greatest asset, what's one way that you would guide people to kind of connect to a higher level of personal self-worth so they can actually see that they are their greatest asset?
Sure, John. I mean, to really frame this for the audience, right? A great way to think about this is really to visualize Maslow's hierarchy, right? That we all learned back in high school. And at the base level, that's really foundational. That's where we're always kind of thinking about financial security, right? And we need food, water, shelter, right? Just to survive. And that's where the majority of financial planning advice really lives, right? It's in this scarcity type mode. But as you move up that pyramid, right, you get to the top level, which is actually self-actualization, right? And that's really having a true abundance mindset. It's where you can create real impact into the world. So when you start to kind of frame that and put yourself in that journey, where are you? Are you down at the bottom in that scarcity type of mindset, or are
Yeah.
you moving closer to the top with an abundance mindset of thinking about how can you grow, how can you serve others, right? And it's so important, right, that we focus on all of the type of impact that we can create, right, and serving others, because if you help enough other people get what they want, you're going to get what you want.
Amen. Amen. No, I love that. Let's do a mini business course on your book. You wrote a book. It can be purchased on your website, pantheoninvest.com, on Amazon. Dave Wolcott, The Holistic Wealth Strategy, a framework for building legacy, wealth, and unlimited freedom to live an extraordinary life. So what are 3 things that people are going to get out of your book?
Well, the biggest thing, John, is that, through my background, I just got completely frustrated with Wall Street and making a 7% return, and told, that I got to just ride out this casino of the stock market. And that's what investing is stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, but I quickly learned that, right, it all starts with you and what is your vision, right, for wealth. How do you actually divine that? So creating your own chessboard that you want to play in, first of all. And then we move into, right, having that right mindset of, okay, now I have my own chessboard. How can I play the long game versus the short game, right? And create these big moves, and as you have that, then you have to start educating yourself and learning that, actually, the top investors in the world, right? They're investing in things like private equity, real estate, right? And we're going after, these other asset classes that are seen as non-traditional or alternative, when in reality, they're actually the opposite. They're tangible assets that you as the investor can actually get access to these types of investments that can significantly move the needle on your wealth, right? And they do 3 different things, which is reduce your taxes. And especially for those business owners out there, right, it's about trying to get your taxes down to 0, which is fully possible, especially being an entrepreneur. It's about providing passive income. So you have multiple passive income streams that you keep accelerating. And then it's all about building, your assets, right? And big things, things such as apartment buildings, self-storage units, right? Different types of assets, and really optimizing this portfolio as well.
Yeah. I always thank you for that. Thank you for that. I always think I wrote a book many, many years ago, and I'm in the process of writing my second book. And a lot of times people ask me, I have a book inside of me, and I've always wanted to write a book, and but I don't know where to start. So where was your starting point when you wrote your book?
I just want to really give back to others, John. I mean, that's what it's really all about to me. And frankly, it actually started with an infographic that I created because I was a limited investor in these different types of assets. I started back in 2000, after my wife and I won the baby lottery and had triplets.
Wow.
And, we literally quadrupled the size of our family.
Yeah.
And I just got so tired of the typical financial planning advice of, market's going to go up, it's going to go down, but you'll make 7% over the long term, and things like 401ks and 529 plans. So what I did was, I started investing in these different assets. I started learning, I started going through all of these things. And then the book is really, it creates a framework for other people of how do you get into this game that frankly the ultra wealthy have known for very long, but they kind of keep it opaque on purpose. So what I've tried to do is, dispel a lot of the myths that are out there in terms of financial planning and give people a real framework or an operating system with which to implement this alternative wealth strategy.
Love it. I love it. I want to do a mini life course on your book and some of the things that you teach people. You know, one of the things you talk about is freedom. And I think a lot of times people are trying to find their freedom right now, right? Freedom in what they do, freedom in what fulfills them, and the more financial freedom they have, the more they can do kind of what's on their bucket freedom list. In many cases, not all. And so, what are three ways that people can, save, look at money, approach money to get one step closer to financial freedom? What would three tips be for people as they're, getting their paychecks and things of that nature?
Yeah, John, I really love this topic, right? It's really investor psychology. And they throw around this buzzword all the time, right? Financial freedom, right? We got to get to financial freedom. And they show a picture of, a couple who's 65 sitting on the beach, right? Drinking margaritas and, life is great then, right? But that might not necessarily mean freedom to you, right? So I really love to have people think about, and this is a great question that the audience can just kind of think about, is if you had $1 billion today, what would you be doing? Where would you be? And who would you be with? Right?
Yeah,
And really, when you start to unpack wealth, we're always scrambling for, what's the highest yield that we could get? We've got to grow our wealth, right? But let's go a little bit deeper, right? What does that really mean to you? And most entrepreneurs are actually driven by Dan Sullivan's four freedoms, right? Which is having freedom of purpose. Number one, to wake up every day and be fascinated and motivated by the work you're doing. Number two, we want freedom of time, right? To be able to be working, when we want, right? And we also want freedom of relationships. We want to choose our partners, we want to choose our customers, right? And be surrounded by like-minded people, right? That inspire us, and that's how we want to spend our time. And then, of course, having freedom of money, right, which allows you to always create a future that's bigger than your past, right? So I think in the essence of it, it's really what we're looking for, especially if you're an entrepreneur. It's about creating these freedoms in your life. And then what can you do, to make chess moves on your board to get closer to that?
yeah. And then what would you say, maybe, how much of somebody's paycheck should be in their 401k? How much should they be investing? How should they be looking at money in that way?
John, I sold everything in my 401k about 8 years. Okay. And here's the thing, right? This is classic is, of course, it's taboo to sell your 401k. No one would ever think to do that. Because why? Because there's a 10% penalty. But we've actually built for investors to get some clarity on what this means to you and how you can actually optimize your hard earned capital, which is a 401k exit calculator. So let's just say you had 100K in your 401k, you paid the 10% penalty, and you paid 35% in taxes that year. So you have a net investable 55K. If I take that 55K and actually invest it in some of the assets that we're talking about in, let's say, an apartment building that's providing tax efficient cash flow. It's compounding at about a rate of 20% annualized a year, right? And if I run that out over 20 years, that 55K grows to over $2 million. Now,
Yeah,
guess what? Leaving that, if I compare that, John, to leaving that 100K in my 401k, what does it do for me at the end of 20 years? It's actually just over 250K. It's all you're going
yeah,
to have. And by the way, that's before taxes, fees, and inflation. So you make your own assumptions, right? But plug in the numbers, and I encourage people to really start to do the math and look at the scenarios that you have available to you. Because when you see that kind of equation, you can make some conservative assumptions, but which side would you rather be on?
Right. Educate yourself so you can make decisions. What I'm hearing you say is, like, educate so you can empower yourself, and make decisions for yourself, not necessarily only relying on, one person.
Yeah,
Um,
most
that makes
90% of
Yeah.
Americans, John, they basically have their money, they've outsourced their entire wealth to some financial planner, and the way that those models work is it's an assets under management plan. So they're
Mm,
collecting fees on you, and so, of course, all they're gonna do is make recommendations based upon the products that they offer, which isn't really being a fiduciary and actually, giving you an informed decision making. And then
yeah.
further than that, right? People have their money tied up in two places, which is, as equity in their primary residence, and the rate of return on equity in your home is actually zero. So it's a really poor use of capital. And then secondly, it's in these government sponsored qualified plans like 401ks, right? That are completely
Yeah.
tax efficient, right? And then subject, to all of these, fees and inflation.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Let's do a quick speed round. A book that's had a big impact on you.
10x is easier than 2x. Dan
Okay.
Sullivan, Ben Hardy.
I love Dan Sullivan. I love Ben Hardy. I think their collaboration of their books is so good. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received.
It's really investing in yourself as your
Yeah.
number one greatest asset.
Finish this sentence. One thing everybody needs to do to invest in themselves, invest in the market, and stay calm along the way is.
Getting crystal clear on your vision statement.
That's great. Dave, this was great. I always appreciate this podcast. I get to learn so much. I get to interview people like you who can share and help people get unstuck and give them answers. I always like to extract, at least one thing. I get so many things, but extract one thing to that I think summarizes everything you said, which is think community, invest in yourself. You are your greatest asset. That requires a little bit of time to read and to study and to research, and those are really, really important. And lastly, get crystal clear on your vision, what you want. It's so important to not just kind of flow through the day without having an anchor of where you're going. Dave, tell everybody who your ideal clients are and where they can connect with you, learn more about you, and buy your book.
Yeah, we love working with ambitious entrepreneurs, investors, right? Typically accredited investors who can get access to these opportunities. And then if anyone would like a free copy of the book, you can just go to holisticwealthstrategy.com and get a free copy of the book.
Love it. Dave, thank you so much. And Think Community, you can reach me at jondwoskin.com if you want to talk about any coaching. Dave, thanks so much. This was great. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you, John.